Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that covers college basketball and the NBA draft inside now. I am Rich Harris, and thank you for joining us again. Today, I am joined by Caleb Slaton, who has returned from Italy and moved into a new duplex. And so how was Italy, Caleb?
Outside of my YouTube TV not being able to work because I was out of the country, so I literally couldn't watch any basketball. It was incredible. Highly recommend. I'm getting to go back to Europe a little bit this summer. But yeah, if you get the chance, I literally just ate pasta, drank wine, walked around. I think I put on 10 pounds in 14 days. I brought a pair of pants that by the end of the vacation, the pants didn't fit. So it was a really good time.
Usually when you go on vacation, you lose. Well, it depends, but I tended to lose weight because you're always on the move, and you just didn't sit around. But all right, well,
I think it was just the carbs. Lunch was meat, bread, cheese. Dinner was pasta. There was 3 or 4 cappuccinos with the milk every day. You're looking at 3/4 to a full bottle of wine for dinner. It was just a lot of everything. And
right.
I don't eat that many carbs. I don't drink a lot. I don't drink a lot of milk. And so it's just everything.
Right. My first trip to Europe was right after college, and I lost 20 pounds. But we were basically doing the backpack hostel thing,
Yeah.
And we hit 4 countries in 2.5 weeks. And yeah.
Where'd you go?
I went to England, the Netherlands, Denmark, and Germany.
Nice.
Yeah. So we flew into England, and then I flew back from Germany.
When I go back this summer, it'll be more of the backpacking hostel thing along the southern part of Europe. So I'm sure, very different trip than yours, but also very different trip than I just took. So,
right. All right. So we had a quick episode last Friday, so we don't have a huge college notebook today that I didn't already cover on Friday. But the first thing I wanted to just ask you was 2 weeks ago, 17 of the 25 ranked teams lost at least once. And I won't list all of them, but then this week it continued. We had Penn State beating Wisconsin. We had Central Florida beating Texas. We had Southern Florida beating Memphis. Memphis lost again to Tulane at Tulane, but I wouldn't necessarily consider that a huge upset because Tulane's pretty good. Then K-State lost again after losing at Central Florida. They lost on Saturday at West Virginia. Then Pitt beat Duke, and Grand Canyon, who's not ranked, but they were 17-1 at the time and definitely looking like a serious tournament team. They lost at Seattle. So I can't recall this many ranked teams losing in a 2-week period. What do you make of it?
I think it's just, I think parity has to be part of it. I think between the transfer portal, obviously NIL is a little bit more influential in football, but it still exists in basketball. I think it's a little bit of both. I think we've seen some injuries with some guys. We've seen some teams in flux. I think teams are generally a little older, and I think older teams tend to have a higher floor. And so I think that even adds to the parity. So I think it's just kind of a combination of all of that. I'm personally really here for it. I think the average level of play is better. I don't think it's that the best teams are worse. I think it's that the teams in the middle and the teams in the middle class are just better than they have been previously.
I agree. And even the teams that we would consider to be the bottom feeders, like Central Florida, they were supposed to be one of the bottom feeders in the Big 12, new to the Big 12, and they come in and they beat Kansas, and they beat who else did they beat? I anyway, they beat another ranked team in the Big 12. And my point being is, even the bottom feeders can win these games. And a part of it, I think, is going all the way back to COVID. These guys are in NIL, like you said, so many players are sticking around. They're not just jumping. They rather be in college now that they're getting some, compensation. They rather be in college, playing in college, than playing in Iowa City in the G League. And so I just think that teams are more balanced and more deeper, even the weaker teams. So,
well, I think especially coming out of COVID, like you had these 2 years of groups of kids that lost games, like they just weren't able to play in basketball games for a year, and scouts weren't able to travel. You didn't see the development linearly as much because you weren't able to see as many games in person, and so that also impacted the recruiting. And guys who guys who might have shot up the rankings at their senior year of high school didn't have that opportunity. They might end up at a mid-major or a mid-tier Power 5 conference, and now that they're in that like college program, really able to be super successful. And so I think coming out of COVID, we also are seeing some of those impacts as well.
Right. So I guess the most interesting thing from this past weekend was Zvonimir Ivisic was finally cleared to play. And, everyone was just thinking, okay, we're going to see him for like 2 minutes. And he came in and
looked really good.
Yeah, he may have had the most impressive debut of any player that ever had to like sit out like that. In just 16 minutes versus Georgia, he had 13 points, 5 of 7 from the floor, 3 of 4 from deep. He added 5 rebounds, 3 blocks, 2 assists, 2 steals. This was all in 16 minutes. And his first assist, the first thing I remember him doing was he grabbed the ball in the post on the break. Somebody threw it to him, and he had a man in front of him, probably could have scored, but instead he did a no-look, complete behind-the-back one-hand pass to, I think it was Antonio Reeves, who knocked down a wide-open 3. He just had the crowd going there. The kid, we had him in our top 200, but I'm thinking the next release of our rankings, he's in the top 100.
Well, I think the other impressive thing too was like the level of difficulty on threes. Like he's 7'2", he's not taking these wide open pick and pop threes because they pass back to him on a pick and roll. He had, I think, like all of them were contested. He had one maybe even off the dribble. I think I remember seeing one off the dribble. Like some real shooting skill. If he's gonna shoot, I don't expect him to shoot 75% from the 3-point line, but like if he's a 42% 3-point shooter, that's a lottery pick.
Right.
Not to jump ahead of ourselves, but
right. No, I hear you. I mean, the kid has a nice shooting motion. He's a good passer. He showed the ability to make an impact on defense and on the boards. He moves well for his size. He's close to 300 pounds, but he doesn't look it. No, he doesn't. He's like 275. He's 7 foot.
I know. It's how big. Like Yao was like 350, and also doesn't really look 350, but he's just thick and 7'5", and just how heavy some of these big guys can be, even when they don't look it.
Right. So yeah, I was duly impressed. In Europe, he didn't. I didn't scout him a ton, but he's always been on our radar for the last 2 years. Last year in Europe, he was okay, but he actually has a twin brother, by the way, who's playing for KK Mega in the Adriatic League, who's pretty high on our draft board too. So, and their numbers have always been historically pretty close. I haven't seen his brother play in probably 2 years. So I don't know if he's made the same strides. But this year in KK Mega, he's doing okay, but not lighting it up. But interesting enough, and they're both 20 years old. So the other interesting thing, when I was making our predictions, I was talking about when my Miami Syracuse game, and I said how much Miami seems to live and die with Norchad Omier. At the time, I didn't know, but he wasn't going to play in that game. I certainly would have picked Syracuse, but so he didn't play. But I will say Miami played pretty darn well without him. And so that was actually a positive. But I don't know what his status is. I just wanted to throw that out there that he is hurt. And now Miami has lost 4 of their last 5 games. So that's the one injury note I have that's significant. So at the midway point here, I know our final 4 picks for me, I still really like 2 of my 4, and the other 2 I'm not so hot on. I just wanted to check in with you. If you had to redo your final 4 picks, who do you like right now?
For the final 4, let's see, I had it written down somewhere. Might go to my own notes. I mean, I still have to Purdue, UConn. I think probably Purdue, UConn, Arizona. I feel pretty good about. Man, that 4th one is tough. Like, I'll be honest, I'm not a believer in Auburn, Tennessee, and Kansas as a Final 4 team. Really good basketball teams. I don't quite know if they're Final 4 material.
Now, Kansas. I mean, they just lost 2 games that they shouldn't have lost.
I know. I love watching Houston play. I don't know if they have the offense.
Right.
I love watching Kentucky play. I don't know if they have the defense. I also don't quite know if they have the size or the experience across the roster. My 4th team, and oh man, this is kind of a hot take, I feel like, especially at this point of the season. I really think I'd have to go Marquette as my 4th.
Wow.
I'm gonna keep with it. I've got a little bit of stock on the island still. I really like their toughness. I really like the speed that they play with.
The problem with Marquette is they've lost some depth of late. They lost Sean Jones, the little electric point guard that they had, and he was always a nice option if Kolek wasn't shooting well, which Kolek hasn't been shooting well of late. And
that's why they're taking some L's.
Yeah, he's out for the year, and Chase Ross is out for a while. He's a wing. Now, I will say they do have freshman wing Zayd Lowry, who's been filling in for Ross, and he's actually looked pretty good. So, but I don't know. It's just Sean Jones just definitely gave that team a little bit of a spark. They've lost
a little bit of a zig.
What's that?
Just like a little bit of a zig compared to somebody like Kolek.
Yeah. So I really loved Marquette at the beginning of the season, but I've kind of cooled on them. So my final 4 would be, I'm going to stick with 2 of my original picks, UConn and Tennessee, and I feel very confident about those teams. The 2 teams I had Duke and Michigan State. I would replace them with Kentucky and Purdue. And the 2 teams I really like the best right now, I think are the 2 best teams in the country, are UConn and Kentucky. But like you said, I am a little worried about Kentucky's defense and inexperience. And Connecticut sometimes can really, like they did against Villanova on Saturday night, they can really, not struggle offensively at times. But their defense is just, they're playing like Houston-like defense these days.
There's size across the board. They've got size and athleticism at every position. They're just tethered to a string to each other in man. Like everybody's in rotation. Nobody's out of rotation. Like what Hurley is doing with that team on defense is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I saw them smother Marquette, and it was, it was just unbelievable. Baylor Scheierman couldn't get off a decent shot. Kalkbrenner couldn't get off a decent shot. Alexander, yeah, he couldn't get off a clean shot. Yeah, it was impressive. And that pretty much continued against Villanova. I mean, Villanova didn't score. I don't know how long it took Villanova to actually score in that game, and they were home. Goodness gracious.
They're such a plotting offense anyway that just plays exactly into how UConn wants to play defense.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it turned into a 1-point game at the very end. So, and Villanova had the lead for a while. So it was back and forth. So Villanova could have won that game. But yeah, so
they didn't.
We'll have to if we ever get Drew on back on the show. He's been very sick. So don't want to make light of that. Yeah, when Drew comes back, I'm curious what his Final Four is.
To wrap up today, I do want to close with there's been some recruiting commitments over the last couple weeks as I've been traveling. I'll go from most recent all the way back. So recently, as of last weekend, VJ Edgecombe, a 6'5" shooting guard out of Long Island, New York, the 4th overall ranked player in the country, a 5-star. He was down to Duke and Baylor and committed to Baylor. And so really just continuing that line of combo scoring guards for Baylor that Scott Drew has brought in there. Edgecombe might be the best of them.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. Couple other notable ones. We've got Prolific Prep High School, which is one of the top 5 high schools in the country, has a pair of commitments. They've got a powerful 6'4" combo guard, Zoom Diallo, committed to Washington. So a 4-star prospect going up there. Top 35 guy. I think he's a really powerful player. I think he will add to the program. And then they also have a 6'7" wing, 5-star 6'7" wing. Prolific Prep does. DaRon Reed going to Alabama. So another 5-star going to Alabama. We're used to saying that for football, but for basketball as well. Also really like Reed. I think he needs some skill work, but as far as an athlete, just a top class athlete. And then 2 more. We've got Billy Richmond coming out of Camden. So a former high school teammate of Aaron Bradshaw and DJ Wagner at Kentucky has committed to play at Kentucky. 6'5" shooting guard, 210 pounds, top 20 guy, just a bulldog. Really, really tough defender. Can score from any level, more of a streaky shooter, but I really he's not the typical just athletic. He is super athletic and he's super physical, but I think his skill level and his tenacity on the offensive defensive end is a little bit higher than some of Cal's classes in the past, and that I really like. And then the last big one, we might have talked about this before, but Dylan Harper, the number 3 player in the country. He was down to Rutgers and Duke and committed to Rutgers. He's a 6'6" combo guard, lefty, a really good shooter. I was watching him play. I forget who I was watching him play a few weeks ago, but hit multiple pin down threes as a lefty 6'6" high school player. So Rutgers has the number 2 player in the country and the number 3 player in the country coming in next year.
Right.
So a lot of talent coming in there to New Jersey.
And I will be hanging out at Rutgers a lot more next season than I am this season for sure. By the way, one more note, as long as we're talking about high-rated freshmen, Wesley Yates, top 50 guy, went to Washington, has been out all season with a foot injury. They decided this week to redshirt him. So Washington will have another great freshman with a year of some experience under his belt, but not playing experience. But
a year in the program.
Yeah, I think that benefits a player. All right, so that wraps up the notebook. As I said, it's going to be short and sweet today. So before we did the stock report, and I sent out to you and Drew and Jake and everybody, every once in a while I do composite rankings, and I'll tell you what sites I look at for those that are curious. I look at of course, our site as well is included in these composite rankings. So I look at The Athletic, Sam Vancini. I look at Bleacher Report, CBS, but CBS, I didn't use theirs because they only had like the top 30, and it looked like it was last updated in August. So
I will say, I know Vecini hasn't updated his in like a month either. So.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, some of them haven't been updated. Yeah, some haven't been updated in like a month. Yeah. ESPN is usually pretty up to date. I use theirs. NBA draft.net, I use theirs. The Ringer and Sports Illustrated. So out of those, CBS was the only one I didn't use this time because it just didn't look updated. But some of the interesting things that came out of there was, first of all, we have a new number one, and that's Zachary Richiche. And the French product, he's as I said last week on the show, he's not Wembayama, he's a wing. He's been shooting well over 40% from deep. He has the ability to score at all three levels. He's excellent in transition. He makes some really good passes. He's a good athlete. And he's only 18 years old, and he's putting up really good numbers in the French league. But here's the thing, and I think I said this on the show a couple weeks ago. I still think there's at least 8 guys that could be the number one pick in this NBA draft. And I have never felt that way at this point in the season. You know, by now you got it down to like maybe at most 5. And pretty much.
So, okay, let's talk about that real quick. So we've got Richiche, Sarr, Jacoby Walter, Topic. I'm assuming Collier and Buzelis. So that gets us to 6, right?
Ron Holland.
Okay, and then
Cody Williams.
I don't buy him as in the conversation for number 1.
ESPN, or no, who has him number 1? No, let's see. NBA Draft.net has him number 1.
Great, good for them.
No, my point of it is, go ahead.
I don't think NBA scouts. I'm not plugged in like somebody like Vecini or anything, but I don't think NBA scouts are generally seriously discussing him number 1. He has been so impressive, though. I don't want to take that away from him. I just don't think his on-ball ceiling is nearly the same as some of those other guys that we've talked about.
Okay. Well, what's interesting is, so we had 1, 2, including our site, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sites. Okay. And there were 6 different number 1 players. We have Richiche. The Athletic and Sports Illustrated have Isaiah Collier. Bleacher Report has Topic. ESPN has Sarr. NBA Draft.net has Cody Williams, and The Ringer has Ron Holland.
I will add. I know you were going to say, or I don't know if you said this. So Collier's the only one with 2 number 1s.
Right.
Tankathon, who I like to go to as a good aggregate, has Alexander Sarr number 1. So okay. I think Sarr is probably the guy that most people feel comfortable with number 1, despite all of that noise.
Okay. And maybe I will incorporate Tankathon in here, especially if CBS is not going to. They really don't seem to be doing much on the draft. But
Bleacher Report also has Sarr number 1.
Oh, they didn't the other day.
This is from 4 days ago, January 18th.
Okay, well, when I did it last week, he had updated it within a week, so he must update it rather regularly.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so of our survey, I'll just read off the lottery picks in order. So we're the only one that had Richiche number 1, but he still comes out number 1 in the composite. Sarr was 2, Jacoby Walter 3, Topic 4, Williams 5, Buzelis 6, Holland 7, Collier 8, Stephen Castle 9, Dillingham 10, Shepard 11, Filipowski 12, Tyler Smith at 13, and Donovan Klingen at 14. So it was really weird just how many. I mean, I've just never seen such a difference in opinion for the number one overall pick. It's a wide open year, just kind of like it is a wide open year to win the national championship. By the way, on our draft board, are you ready for this? We have a record number of players from one team. Typically, I'll have a handful of teams that have maybe 4, 5, 6 players. This year, Duke has 7, which is
how many. Before you get to the record, how many people do we put on our draft board?
200.
Okay, so pretty large.
Right. Well, actually, our draft board goes 1,200 deep, but I only published 200. But Kentucky now has a record number on our draft board, 10. 10. Never had any team. And Duke, usually Duke having 7, that's pretty extraordinary. But to have a team with 10, unheard of in our poll. But it's just the way I see it, and that's probably why I'm liking Kentucky to be one of the Final 4. If you're curious, some of the more polarizing prospects were Klingen, Aizan Almanza, who's a French player who's playing in for G League Ignite, Yves Misi, Aaron Bradshaw, Caravan, Judah Mintz, Dylan Mitchell, Wooga Poplar, DaRon Holmes, Carlton Carrington. For example, with Carrington, the Bleacher Report has totally, remember they had him as a top 10 player. They now have Carrington, if I could find him.
61.
61? Well, I think that's even lower than they had him a few days ago.
So by that metric, he's dropped out of it.
He's dropped out of the draft, right? They had him top 10 a couple months ago. Now he's down to 61. But NBADraft.net still has him at number 4. Last week when you weren't here, Tyrese Proctor and Ade Mara, we both had them on, that their stock was falling. And at the time, they were both listed as lottery picks in the last survey I did. But in this survey, they have definitely slipped. Mara came out in 56 in the collective rankings, and Proctor's all the way down to 34. This is a guy who started off the season as a top 10 pick, now down to 34.
And then I'll even add the Wasserman's mock that he came out with 4 days ago. So this isn't big board, right? Like the mock is a little bit different, but he's got Proctor going 47th.
Wow. Okay. All right. So, well, I mean, I was never high on Proctor as much as everyone else. And so that doesn't surprise me personally. I will say, when I was doing the Bleacher Report, what I do is I sort our draft board because I know where our guys are. So if he has Bradshaw number 2, I know him. I know I have him around 20, so I can easily find him. When I was doing the Bleacher Report, I was like, okay, oh my God, I don't even know where I have this guy. Oh, I have him at 564th. Oh, I have him at 800.
That low?
No. I'm just saying with the prospects that Bleacher Report had, I had to dig and search because they had guys I had ranked like 500th and 600th and NBA DraftNet too. They had me jumping all over the place, and that's
we've got Riley Kugel at like 101, and SI's got him at 30 still. So there's some discrepancy there as well.
Well, maybe they should talk to the coach at Florida who's just benched him.
It's been a rough year for Kugel.
Yeah, it's a terribly rough year.
For the NBA game, who would your preference be? Dillingham or Shepard?
I like Shepard. And I like Shepard because he's more versatile. He impacts the game in many, many ways. Dillingham, is just he definitely has the athleticism and the speed to make an impact in the NBA game. Of course, Shepard's a little bigger in both bulk and in height. Not a ton, but bigger. But he's not nearly as fast. Shepard, I think, is a cleaner shooter and is going to make a higher rate, especially, catch and shoot. I have them close. And if you look at the composite rankings, there's like 4 sites like Dillingham better and 3 sites like Shepard better, but they all have them pretty damn close. So, it is a tough question. How about yourself?
I think, yeah, I would agree. I think Shepard. I think Dillingham could have the higher ceiling, but I still don't hesitate. I still hesitate to feel like his ceiling is the highest outcome I see for him is like a 6-man.
Right.
Right. I don't see Dillingham as a starter. I don't think he could be a starting guard. He isn't efficient enough right now. He's super explosive. He just isn't quite efficient enough.
From the outside, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, to really round out. I am impressed by his decision making, though. He's averaging almost 5 assists. Where there's a lot of guards on that team, a lot of people on that team that need the ball, and I still think he's making really good plays. And I like the way he fights on defense. He really wants to pressure the ball. He really wants to get up into guys. But he can get a little lost on the off ball. He can get a little bit of lost coming over screen with some of his screen navigation, so I worry about that. And he's going to be ruthlessly hunted in the playoffs. I don't know if he can play could he play in the playoffs right now? Dillingham?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if either of them could, but
Shepard's the question of who's the best shooter in college basketball is Reed Shepard and Dalton Knecht.
Right.
And Shepard is blowing every stock metric that we have out of the water.
This is true.
I think the question for Shepard, and so I think his floor is so much higher. The question is how much of a limitation is his dribbling and his.
Well, I don't think that's his game, and I don't think it ever will be his game. I see him being somewhere like a Shepard being like a JJ Redick who plays better defense.
My guy.
Yeah, but that's what I see Shepard being, because Shepard's a fighter, man. He's a scrap.
Yeah.
Or maybe like a Grayson Allen, but still, again, a better defender,
Grayson's year's been incredible.
Right.
Would you rather have JJ or Lou Williams?
JJ.
Those are the. I think this is
Lou Williams will always dominate the ball, and if he's hot, that's great. If he's not, we got a problem.
Do you think Dillingham? Is Dillingham a good enough pass? I think you see some of the side to side dribble, that wiggle and that burst that Lou had with Dillingham. Is Dillingham a better passer, a good enough passer to kind of overcome that?
I don't know. It's tough when you're watching Kentucky because everybody on the floor is a draft prospect, and I haven't gotten to the point where I've just sat down and just watched one guy and just studied him game in and game out. And that team, though, I will say, they do have their defensive lapses, but for once, you got a Kentucky team that can shoot. You also seem to have freshmen that want to play together, that want to win, and that's their goal. This Kentucky team is different than other Kentucky teams.
Yeah, I also think you see that they have so many all three big. Now that they have all 3 big guys, they all offer something different.
Yes.
He has so many pieces to play with. He can go small. He could go Tiero at the 4. And Trey Mitchell at the 5.
Yep.
And go.
That's
small,
how they started the season,
which I love. To me, that's big Ivanovic or Ivisic.
Yeah.
might change some of that calculation, but man, that lineup was fun. And then go Antonio Reeves and the two young guards up front. But man, they just have so many pieces.
But he also could even move Trey Mitchell to the 3, play Bradshaw at the no. I just got done interviewing Trey. Trey's very confident that he could play at the 3, and in fact, he said that's where Bob Huggins planned to play him this year before Huggins left West Virginia. Trey's game has changed a lot since his days at UMass or even Texas.
Yeah, Anthony Davis wants to be a 4. He's still a 5.
Yeah, I know. I get it.
I think he can be confident in it. Like, part of being that level of athlete and that successful is that you're confident in what you can do.
Right.
I just don't think that'd be that, like.
No, it's not ideal. It's not ideal. I think Thiero is a better 3 than Trey would be.
Yeah.
But still, I'm just saying, you do have a lot of versatility with that.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to who's hot and who's cold, and we're going to start off with Kentucky's sharpshooting wing, Dalton Knecht. If you look at his game logs, he's been
Colorado's very own.
Huh? Right. Started at Northern Colorado. How did he?
You said Kentucky's Dalton.
Oh, Knecht. I meant Tennessee. Last 4 games. You ready for this? And against good teams. Mississippi State, 28 points. Georgia, 36 points. Florida, 39 points. Alabama, 25 points. And Tennessee, of course, won 3 of the 4 with the 1 loss coming at Mississippi State. So I assume you've seen Knecht play more than once this year. The interesting thing is, the composite rankings have him, about what we do in the 30s. Okay. But a lot of people are saying he's a lottery pick. So I was curious what your thoughts are. I mean, I pretty much think he's got a great shot at being a first-round pick, if at worst early second round. But I don't see him being a lottery pick personally.
Yeah, I think there's still a pretty large argument that you should draft as young as possible. I saw this statistic the other day that it was like the predictions of all NBA teams and all-star teams based on age when drafted. And like the highest ceiling guys and the highest outcome guys tend to come from guys who are drafted when they're 20. It's like if you're 18 or 19, you're like a little too young and you can't really quite figure out how to be professional. But if you're too old, you just like don't have that upside.
Right.
And so I see, like, to me, that's what kind of keeps Knecht from really being like a true lottery guy. Like maybe he sneaks into 14, 15. But I think of a guy like McCullough out of Kansas.
Right.
Like I've seen him mocked up to the late lottery.
I don't buy that either.
And why would you take McCullough? What is McCullough like? He is a better defender.
Yes.
But like give me the guy who I think has the higher IQ. Give me the guy who I think continues to show growth, like large amounts of growth year after year, and as he's jumping competition too. Like give me the guy who's the better shooter. I think athleticism between the two is probably a push. I don't necessarily like lottery might be stiff, but I would certainly take him in the 14 to 20 range, and that's a guy that I would bet on.
All right, so you're definitely buying his stock. I'm still, like I said, I still have him in the 30s, but it's early, and unlike some sites, I tend to move slowly. I do. I just, I want to watch. We have till June, so there's no sense putting a guy up, number 10. Based on
to drop back down,
and to drop them down to 60,
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't work that way. So I'm buying a stock. First rounder. I think he has a really good shot. Lottery. A good example though is Jaime Jaquez. And that's the age thing you were talking about. Ultra productive player, could impact the game in a lot of different ways. He went like 18 or 19 to the Heat. I think that's probably the ultimate Knecht can look for. All right. So the next guy on our list is somebody you have to be ultra familiar with, and that's little R.J. Davis from North Carolina. North Carolina, as you said in the preseason, I really like this team. And
I hated to say it. I hated to say
it. But and I too liked him. But you definitely pointed out, that this team had a lot of upside, didn't have many holes, and R.J. Davis has been one of 3 players that have really played well for them, Baycott and Harrison Ingram as well. But I think Davis has probably been the most consistent, the most reliable in terms of scoring. He's been in double figures going all the way back. Geez, oh my goodness, he has scored in double figures. The last time he didn't score in double figures was November 17th, and we're talking a lot of 20-point games.
He's averaging 20 on the season.
Right. So he's having a great little season. So what are your thoughts on R.J. Davis as a draft prospect? We have him borderline second-round pick in the collective rankings.
He is 109 on the composite. Bleacher Report has him 57th, and ESPN has him 93rd.
Okay. And we have him, I think, around. We have him 57th. What's that?
You guys have him 57th.
Okay. All right.
Or I guess we have him.
All right. So, I think he's, he's a dynamic scorer. I don't think he's going to be a starter at the NBA level, but I think he has can make an impact as a backup point guard, as an explosive scorer off the bench.
I think he can be an undrafted guy, like maybe get some 10 days, stick in the league, be like a good practice player. I mean, if I'm being realistic, it's like he's 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
Who's the 6 foot tall guys that are getting regular rotation minutes in the NBA right now?
Yeah, true.
Like honestly, I think it comes.
How tall is Peyton Pritchard?
He's listed at 6'2".
Well, not a hell of a lot of difference there.
No, but I mean, there's other things, right? Like length factors in, strength factors in. I think RJ's ability to shoot is absurd. Like he's shooting 41% from the 3-point line on 7.5 threes a game. And if he's going to be successful, that's what's going to be his calling card, and he has to be able to keep that up. I've been crazy impressed. Like when we talked about North Carolina at the beginning of the year, I thought somebody like Elliot Cadeau might be a little bit more of the difference maker. And I think Cadeau's been great as a point guard, and he's just really allowed RJ Davis to score the basketball.
Right.
And he creates so much space for that North Carolina offense with his ability to shoot both off the dribble, off the catch. And like it's simplified his decision making. And so now he's got a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio because of just his reads are simpler than kind of like last year when he was the point guard and Caleb Love was more of the scoring person.
Right.
So, I mean, I really like him. Like, I loved what I've seen out of him this year. I would give him a look as an undrafted guy. I think just due to the size and the age, again, I think I would be like tough. It'd just be tough for me to get him actually in that second round.
Okay, that's fair enough. Like I said, I have him as a borderline second round pick, and I do agree with all your concerns. I do see him as, being nothing better than a limited backup, with a role of being an explosive backup point guard who can score for you in short bursts. He's always probably going to be a defensive liability because of his size, but he is a solid playmaker. Kenny, he's never been a true point guard. He's a score first point guard. So yeah. So there are things to be concerned about, which is why I definitely I'm not convinced he will be drafted. I'm not convinced he will stick. But I think when you're talking about smaller players, I think he's one of the better smaller players out there.
That's fair.
Okay, I want to talk about 2 other guys, and one of them is the Mexico freshman. JT Toppin or Jadyn Toppin, depending on who you ask. And coming out of the recruiting rankings, Jadyn was, I have 109 in the 247 composite rankings. He's playing more like a top 20 recruit. The guy is on fire. Now, there are certain, first of all, he's 18, okay? And there are certain aspects of his game that are lacking. I don't expect him to come out this year, but he's if I don't know where I had him the last rankings, but I saw him play again and I was impressed again. So he's going to move into our top 100. This guy is very athletic. He's an excellent rebounder, an excellent defender, a great shot blocker. The one area where he definitely has to improve is shooting. But you know what? He fits in perfectly with New Mexico because New Mexico's got a bunch of shooters. So I don't know if you've seen Jadyn play this year, but I am ultra impressed. And he's starting to show up on other people's draft boards too.
I really like his athleticism, his activity, his ability to just he's got a knack for getting the ball in the basket, clean up around the rim. His 3-point shooting is a sight for sore eyes. But I'm really impressed. I think maybe next year, 2 years, could be a really good NBA wing role player with that athleticism.
Okay. So
I haven't seen it. I've seen New Mexico play once or twice. Super fun team. Just I really like their team. Definitely got to keep your eye on.
All right. I'm definitely buying his stock. It's relatively low price right now, but I'm buying his NBA stock. And the next guy on our list is also a West Coast guy, and I'm buying his stock too. And he's not really showing up on anybody's draft board but ours, but I think that will change soon. And that's Jonathan Mogbo, who plays for University of San Francisco. Didn't have a great game on Saturday against St. Mary's. St. Mary's has really got it cooking now. But Mogbo leads the country in dunks. He's second in field goal percentage. He's been a double-double machine. He scored in double digits the last 7 games in a row. In terms of rebounding, he's usually getting you at least 6-7 rebounds a game, and sometimes double digits.
He's averaging 10, isn't he?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, he's gotten at least 10 in 6 of the last 7 games, with the exception being that St. Mary's game. But the really impressive thing about this guy is he is a great passer. He had one game this year, I think, with 11 assists, but it's not uncommon to see him have 4, 5, 6 assists. And we're not just talking your dump into those posts and then he, kicks it out to an open shooter. We're talking about behind the back, between the legs type of passes, tricky passes that the defense just doesn't see coming. Now, of course, he doesn't even attempt jump shots right now. And he's an older guy at 22 years old, I believe. He's 22. He's 22.
Okay.
So, to me, I was like, how could this type of athlete have not ended up in D1 before this? That's amazing to me. And I'll tell you who he reminds me of. Dennis Rodman. And I don't say that often. I don't usually make crazy comparisons. No, I don't. I'm not one that, everyone, makes all these comparisons, and I'm not a big comparison guy. But you know what? Even if he never develops a shot, I can still see him having a role as a Dennis Rodman-like guy. So have you seen him?
Man, I've watched San Francisco play a couple of times. I just really struggle to, unless you're 7'2", 7'3", I think it's just tough to be a non-shooter. I think that's hard. I really like his activity. I think he's got a really high basketball IQ. Clearly an NBA level athlete. I'm a push on the stock right now, honestly, because of the shooting. I think I could very much see him being an undrafted ends up on like the Miami Heat Summer League team, plays really well in the Summer League in a system like that, that's super physical, up and down, and then like ends up on the back end of somebody rotation. He reminds me as somebody that would have fit well into the Golden State system a couple years ago. That like really bing 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 moves the ball. You don't need the spacing because Steph and Clay were at their peak. Can finish around the rim, versatile defender, rebounds well, which they always needed. So if he can land in that kind of system, but as far like I think he could have a cup of coffee in the league. Definitely a professional athlete level, but as far as like his actual draft stock, I think it'd just be like a push for me right now.
Yeah, I think he has one more year, I believe. So
I'm assuming he'll take it.
Yeah, I think he will, and hopefully he'll work on that shot. We get a chance to see him again this week against Gonzaga on the road. Like I said, St. Mary's kind of came up with a good plan to slow him down. So they were the first team to do it in quite some time. So it'll be interesting to see how he does on the road at Gonzaga. But I'm buying again, cheap. We're the only person that has him on the draft board. I think he's definitely a player to keep an eye on and certainly fun to watch. Now, when we talk about cold players, we're going to start off with Kylan Boswell, the young sophomore at Arizona, who's kind of hits the skids a little bit, at least in terms of scoring. He hasn't broke the best he's done in the last 4 games is 11 points. In one of those games, he came up empty, came up with 0 points against Washington State, was 1 for 6.
That was such a rough game for Arizona generally.
Against UCLA or against what?
No, against Washington State.
Yeah, and then he was 1 for 6 against UCLA for 3 points. So, what do you think? Boswell is somebody in the composite rankings. He is 22. 22. I think we have him.
25th.
We have a 25. So we're right there. Are you buying or selling Kylan Boswell as a first-round pick?
I might buy a little. I mean, I might draft him as a late first round. I think 25 is a good spot. Like, I don't know if I think he should come out this year. Maybe next year. I do want to see more offense, just more offensive consistency. Arizona also just has like a lot of guards, so like. You talk about his last few games, like his shooting is all over the place. Like his actual shot numbers, he's got 6, 12, 5, 7, 10, 11, 4, 16, 14. Like there's a lot of fluctuations with that. His threes, there's a lot of fluctuations. Some games he's at 6, 7. Some games he's at 2. So I wonder like how much that consistency, like on ball or off ball, and like that consistency and roll with a lot of those Arizona guys are factoring into the offense. But like to me, he's still a really high field guy. I really like his toughness. He probably guards 2 positions. He's a 2-position defender in the NBA. Mm-hmm. I think athletically he's there, but maybe not.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. I really like him as like a future NBA player, at least again, like end of the first round, beginning of the second round. He seems more, yeah. So I might buy a little, but I'm going to also like defer it a year or 2 as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. He should wait 1 more year. I think if he continues on this pace, we're going to end up dropping him some. Sure. And I do feel ultimately he could wind up in that 25th spot. But, the way he's played the last 2 weeks, he's not looking that way. But here's the interesting thing, Caleb. Even if he comes out next year, he'll still be younger than some incoming freshman. He's still only 18. Next year, he'll be 19. And a lot of freshmen come in at 19 years old. So there's no hurry for him. He can develop his game. And I'm going to say, here's the other thing, the reason why I love him. he shot above 39% now for 2 seasons in a row. Well, actually, last year, 39% from three. This year, 40% from three on over 5 attempts per game. He's a good foul shooter. And if you look at his body, which is still developing,
he's so physically strong.
He's physically strong, solidly built. So yeah, there's a lot to like about Kylan, and he's still really young. So I'm really high on him. I mean, not lottery, I don't think he'll ever at that size. I mean, he'd have to really take up his game, and but I definitely think he's a first rounder. All right. Even though, so the next guy on our cold list is Carlton Carrington, and I know you were disappointed with his performance when the first time Pittsburgh played Duke, and even this week when they beat Duke, he still was 3 of 9 for only 9 points. In the game against Syracuse, he was 0 for 10 for no points. The loss against Duke, he was 4 of 16. So, and as we know, his draft stock is dropping. I think now I'm actually higher than most. Then, before I was like, how can they have this guy as a top 10 guy? But he's still one of the youngest players in this draft class. So where are you on Carrington at this point?
Oh, I'll buy their stock. I'd still draft. I really like his game. I like his ability. I know his rim finishing has not been great, and I think he still has a lot to work on. Like, I think he probably should also come back a year.
Yeah.
Just physically.
Again, he'll only be 19 next year.
Yeah, like his ability to develop core strength, I think, is going to help him a ton to get to finish at the rim, because if you watch him play, and this is why, right, like, scouting always has to be a blend of watching and looking at the stats. Like, his stats would tell you he doesn't shoot layups and that he shoots terribly when he does shoot them. But he gets to the rim, he does just pass out way too often, and I think that's a confidence in his core strength and in his own. He just gets scared going at the rim, and I think as he gets stronger, I think he's going to develop that core that I think that's going to help him finishing. I still really like his ability to manipulate the defense out of the pick and roll. His ability to pass and get to a shot is still there. He's super young, and as far as his inconsistencies with his 3-point percentage, again, that comes from just physically being on the weaker side. Right. You're gonna go through these ups and some downs when you don't have that foundation in your core and in your legs as a shooter, especially when now, for most of the season, every team has game plan for him. He's pretty comfortably at the 35-minute a game mark, or 35, playing 35 minutes a game, which is a ton, especially for a 17-year-old in a college game.
Here's the thing, the dumbasses who put him in as a lottery pick after 2 games, they didn't do him any favors.
No.
They did not do that kid any favors, because that puts tremendous amount of pressure on him. So
I'll buy his stock though. I'm still in. Yeah,
I'm still in as well. But cool. I never was ready to call him a first round pick, and I'm still not. I think if he did come out, I think he would get drafted at the end of the second round. But I would suggest, like you said, stay in a year. All right.
I would still take him in the first round personally, but
okay. All right.
Well, I guess there's the balance of if you're doing your team intel and you know that no other team is going to take him, you're gonna wait as long as possible to take him, and so I totally understand that argument. But I still believe he is the talent to be a first round pick.
Okay, fair enough. The next guy on our list, I think you might disagree with me, but I think he's a lot like R.J. Davis. Why
would I disagree?
Well, I don't know. He's got him by about an inch or two, I think. Didn't L.J. Cryer 6'2", 6'1"?
No, he's listed at 6'1".
Right. And actually, he actually had a good game this weekend against UCF, but that was his first good game in a while. He had 3 straight games where he scored less than 9 points. 2 of 9 against Iowa State, 2 of 14 against TCU, 3 of 8 against Texas Tech. And then he had 16 this weekend against UCF. So LJ Cryer is a guy that we've probably had for like 3 years now, right around 80, 90, 100 on our draft board, and he's still there. What do you think?
He's fine. I mean, he's not as good RJ Davis. Is that rough to say?
No. I think they're very similar. You know, he went to Houston to become a better defender. And I think that's put a lot of pressure on him to try to become excellent at one thing and still continue to do what he always did, which was be an explosive scorer.
Which he is a better defender, I will say.
Okay.
I think so. I just think he's limited by his size.
Right.
He's 6'1", 6 foot. He's really 6 foot 175, and like that's limiting. But I think he plays Houston defense, which is just in your face and tough. Right. He just is such an inconsistent 3-point shooter. Especially if you look like he's shooting 39% for the season. But like you look at his last few games and his 3-point percentage is 40% on 10 attempts, 50% on 4 attempts, 14% on 7 attempts, 16% on 6 attempts. And then we've got 57, 66, and then we're back down to 20, 20, 30 set. Like, and I think that goes to what you're saying of just like the load. I think it's the offensive load that they're putting on him. I think he's a good combo guard. I think undrafted guy, summer league. If his 3-point percentage can level out and be more consistent, and he can simplify some of those reads on offense, that'll shore up his decision making. The big real development that I would love to have seen from him this year, really more than the defense, is like his ability to manipulate the pick and roll. I still don't like quite see that. He tends to be like a one decision pick and roll guy, get and go, ice and step back for the 3, as opposed to really bobbing and weaving and like hitting some of the weak side guys, hitting some of the rollers. He does just carry such a huge load for that Houston offense that can also struggle to score.
Right. This is true. You know, no one's really talking about him much as being a draft pick this year. I think in previous years, you know, he's been in, you know, that kind of borderline second round territory. And I unless something significantly changes, I think he's just going to stay there for me. And so I think summer league guy is undrafted. Summer league guy is where he's headed. And so I'm probably not buying, and I'm just not as impressed with him as RJ Davis's ability to create for others and to create his own shot.
Totally agree.
All right. So the last guy on our list is Trevon Brazile, and this is a guy that people love. People love Trevon Brazile.
Do they?
Oh, well, let's see it. We'll look. But, and of course, Arkansas lost again at home. Devastating season for Arkansas. They just are not used to losing at home. Yes, in the composite rankings, he's 37. Some people have him pretty darn high. You know, like first round territory. Let me just take a peek.
ESPN's the one who's got him high. They've got him at
19.
So that well, and then
SI's got him at 24. So I've never had Trevon Brazile that high. I was really impressed last year before he got hurt. I personally, right now, from what I can see, which, you know, has been a small sample, you know, what we see him for like 10 games last year. Oh, and by the way, he hasn't scored in double figures in 4
games.
Seven of his last 9 games, he's been under 10 points. And those two exceptions were 11 against Auburn, 12 against UNC Wilmington. So right now, Trevon's 21. I just don't see him as a first-round pick. He's very athletic. Let's hear. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I wouldn't take him in the first round. I would do a flyer maybe at the end of the first round, at the end of the second. Sorry. I mean, he's super athletic. I think he can be a shooter. I like his. I like his form. I couldn't think of it. I like his form shooting the ball, both from the free throw and the three. He's a better shooter from both this year than he has been in the last few years. Man. Okay, so I'm thinking of a. Oh man, I have a player comp for him on the tip of my tongue, but it's just not coming to me.
Well, here's the thing. Well, think about that for a second. Why I throw this in. I think the one thing Arkansas and everybody who loved him in the beginning of the season as a draft prospect were thinking, this is a guy that can come out and carry a team, like be your top scorer. And he has proven, I think, this year that that's not the type of guy he is. Maybe with another year of experience, he will be a top. He might be a guy who can give you a college team like 15 points a night, but it just hasn't been the case this year. He's averaging 9 points per game. He's doing well in the rebound department. He's a good shot blocker, good defender, and a decent shooter, but I just haven't seen enough in any department, really, except for impressive dunks. Yes, he can make impressive dunks, but that's just not enough for me to put him in the first round. So I have him at the end of the second round. And if I had to, if I have to buy him any higher, I'm not. So I would say I'm kind of selling compared to where other people are ranking him.
My comp is Christian Wood.
Yeah, well, Trevon Brazile plays a lot more defense than Christian Wood, but statistically.
But offensively,
yeah.
like he kind of, to me, he's like a diver or a shooter. He's not really going to do anything else in between. And I think that anybody who thought he could carry an NCAA offense and be like the number one guy, I just don't think have watched him play, because he doesn't get his own shot.
Right.
And I think that's part of the problem with that inconsistency of scoring, is that their guard play has been all over the place this year, and so has like the amount of shots that he's taken. Like you look at he's gotten 3 shots, 5 shots, 10, 7, 9, 6, 2, 10, 9, 4, like just so much inconsistency. And I'm sure inconsistency as far as like where he's posting up. Is he getting that pick and pop shot that he can hit pretty well? I don't really think he's got the dribble game to get to the line.
Right.
To pick up those like easy buckets, even though he is a good free throw shooter. So I'm perfectly okay with him in the second round. Like I think he could be give him a couple years in an NBA system with a guard who can get him some shots, and he can develop some more consistency there. And I think he can be a good like defending fours, weak side shot blocker. I don't think he's ever going to be big enough to get 5s, but I think he probably has the foot speed to guard some 4s and maybe some big 3s if he can get into a stance. I think he's got the athleticism. So I'm perfectly push on him as a second round guy.
Right. So before we move on to our picks of the week, I wanted to go back to our mailbag. Now, we got this question over the Christmas break. But I've been waiting for you, because you and I talked about David Jones when we brought him up in the Who's Hot department, just before Christmas. And so Keon asked, why are you so down on David Jones? He's a stud. He has good size, can score from anywhere, rebounds, plays D. I don't think we were so down on him. In fact, he's moved up our draft board. We had him, I don't know, maybe around 120 before Christmas. Now he's up to about 89, I think. I'm not down on David Jones, and I said at the time, I'm not ruling him out as being a draft pick. I think we were concerned about turnovers. We were concerned about the fact that this was really his first ever good year shooting. But I think he really has improved tremendously, from where he was at DePaul, where he was at St. John's. And I basically said at the time, I want to watch more. And I'm impressed. I'm moving him up the draft board. What do you think, Caleb?
I mean, if the shooting's real, he's a second-round prospect. I don't think that's actually a question. He does have great size. I think he's a good positional defender. I don't think he can be a good team defender. I don't think he's an incredible on-ball, one-on-one stopper.
No, I don't either.
No. And so if the shoot, but that's the thing. If the shooting is real, who asked the question? What was his name?
Keon.
In his freshman year, he shot 0.07%. He shot 7% from the 3-point line. His sophomore and junior year, he shot under 30% from the 3-point line. So, if he's a 40% shooter, yeah, he's a second-round pick. He's an NBA player pretty comfortably. He's probably a rotation guy, honestly. I really do like him. He just is, as we discussed early in the episode, he's 22, right?
Right. And
he's 22.
And he's had trouble with turnovers. And
yeah.
And this is his first good year shooting. I actually watched him play against Tulane yesterday. And they lost, close game, but he went for 32, I think 32 and 11. His shot creation is really good. He's got a lot of different moves, and he also is slick about it. I mean, he uses a lot of jab steps and shot fakes.
He's crafty.
Yeah, crafty. That's the word I wanted. But he has slide steps, step backs, Euro steps. I mean, he has all that stuff. He can score at all three levels. He can even post up for you, and he can even run the pick and roll for you. So I'm seeing a lot of I'd like to see the turnovers go down. He's also not a great finisher.
No. Much more of a mid-range and kind of off the dribble shooter.
Yeah. He's much more of a shooter than he is a driver. But he can drive. He's also a lefty. That's usually an advantage. So, no, it is.
I know.
So I like David Jones, and we'll see. He's moving on up. Our draft board.
All right, I've got one last draft guy that I want to ask you about because it's personal for me, and I've got incredibly mixed feelings. DaRon Holmes.
Oh. Well, we actually had DaRon on the show last summer. Not this past summer, but summer.
Great guy. Yeah.
I was really impressed. The last time I saw DaRon play, it was against UMass. And he had an incredible dunk in that game.
That dunk was where he dunked it on two people.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was filthy.
His team was breathless. I mean, they were all leaving at the, they called a timeout after that play, and all of his teammates had their mouth, open. They were couldn't believe it.
Do you know the painting from the Sistine Chapel where it's Adam and God touching hands?
Yes.
So somebody on University of Dayton Twitter made. I don't know if I'll have to text it to you, they remade the Sistine Chapel, God and Adam touching hands, but instead of Adam, it's DaRon dunking on that guy from UMass.
Anyway, he looks in better shape to me this year. His jump shot looks smoother. I think DaRon is a borderline first-round pick. I've had him in the low 30s for probably 3 straight years. But to me, obviously he gets older, so that hurts his stock. But at the same time, I also see improvement. Lots
of improvement. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see him rebound a little better. I'm still a little worried about his perimeter defense. But I think he is definitely very draftable. And we'll go late first round, mid second round at worst.
Fair. Okay. Just curious.
All right. All right. So we're going to move on to the picks of the week. I was the only person to pick last week, and I only did the weekend's games, and I was a dismal 8-7. Overall,
are you factoring that into your overall?
Yeah,
for the year?
Okay. That's in there. So 8-7 brought me down under 60%. So what this goes to show you? Last year I was close to 70%. This year I had been just barely above 60. Now I'm at 59.6. We really should be around 60-65%. It's just telling you how unpredictable this year is.
Well, and the rest of us are all in the mid 50s. So
it's just a really hard year. All right.
Yeah.
So here we go with tonight's games. We have Wake Forest, who's finally gotten 100% healthy. Damari Santo played Saturday. I believe he had 12 points in 11 minutes. And they visit North Carolina tonight. Who you got, Caleb?
Do you want the halftime update before you pick?
Oh, no, I don't want any updates.
Oh, I think I just have to stay with North. I'm gonna have to stay with North Carolina.
All right. I too am going with North Carolina. I don't know the score, but at home, North Carolina has just been cooking. All right. Now we have Cincinnati with Kansas has dropped all the way to number 7. Cincinnati's visiting Kansas, who is coming off a loss.
I mean, I'll go Kansas. They've struggled of late, and I think coming back home, they really need to. I like this Cincinnati team. They've got some spunk, but if Kansas actually shows up, they should win by 8+ points.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. If you're a betting person, when Cincinnati loses, they barely lose. So I think it could be close. I don't think this Kansas team is as good as number 7 in the country. But I'm going with Kansas because they really need this one, and they are at home. All right, tomorrow night we have Kentucky at South Carolina, who's 14-3, just coming off a win at Arkansas.
My high school team could beat Arkansas right now. Kidding. Very, very, very bad joke. Very not true. I'll keep with Kentucky. I'll take chalk.
All right,
I just think their guards are so good, and they have so many pieces to play with on the offense and the defensive end. Right.
I got to agree with you. I love Kentucky. I think this South Carolina team's playing a little over its head right now. All right, next we have Texas at number 11, Oklahoma.
I'm gonna pick the upset. I'm gonna go with Texas. I think they have the more talented team. I think Oklahoma is playing a little bit above their heads. They've had a really good year. I don't think their schedule's been particularly tough, honestly. I'm gonna go with Texas. I'm gonna go with the talent. I think they need to start figuring some stuff out.
Right. I have picked against Oklahoma a lot of times, and every time I end up losing. So tonight I'm going to go with Oklahoma. And that's the only reason, is because I picked them to lose at Cincinnati this weekend, and they won. So I'm going with OU. But again, I do agree that they're just not the number 11 team in the country. All right, we have 2 surprise teams that are toward the top of the ACC. Florida State at Syracuse.
I'm going to go with Syracuse. I'm going to go with the guards at home. Really like their backcourt. And I think they'll be able to bring that offensively. To me, that's like a who's playing at home game.
Right. JJ Starling is really starting to pick it up. Syracuse could be a team to watch. They have some good unheralded players. We have Houston, number 4, against number 21 at number 21 BYU.
Oh man, this is the tough. This was, of all the ones we've done yet, this is the toughest for me. I'm just going to stick with Houston. Really like Kelvin Sampson's team. Really like the toughness. Defense travels. Some of their guys just have to shoot better. I think that's what it comes down to.
Right. This is offense versus defense. BYU's home. Houston. I don't know when the last time Houston was in the mountains up in Provo. I'm going to go with the Cougars in BYU. All right, we have the battle of the
Iron Bowl.
Yeah, the Iron Bowl. Auburn at Alabama.
I don't even know where to start. I'll pick Auburn. I think just Alabama doesn't like to play defense.
Oh, sorry. I agree. I like Auburn. This team, I don't know if it's the 8th best team in the country, but they sure are playing well.
Is Alabama the SEC? Oh, no, Arkansas is in the SEC too.
Yeah.
In the SEC too. So they're like the same team, right? Is it like the Spider-Man meme where they just point at each other?
No. Well, difference is Alabama is 4-1 in conference. Arkansas is like 1-4 in conference.
It's the same vibes to me.
Yeah, I agree. I hear you. I know what you're saying. I don't have a good feeling about this team. You know, I heard somebody this weekend call Alabama a national championship contender, and I'm like, you need your head examined.
Were they talking about last year's football season?
Or last year's basketball team?
Yeah.
All right, we have Villanova and St. John's, both of them coming off of heartbreaking losses.
I don't know. I'll take Patino in the Garden, I guess.
Okay. I am going to go with Villanova. I was impressed that they could hang with Connecticut. I think this team's starting to turn the corner. So I'm going to go with Nova. All right. So next we have Illinois, who just got Terrence Shannon back. He had a nice game in his return. They are up to number 10 in the country at Northwestern.
I'm going to go Illinois. Really like their wing depth. Really like their balance across the board, especially with Terrence Shannon's ability to create on ball. I think at his size, just really adds a whole nother dimension to that Illinois team.
And Coleman Hawkins is catching fire too.
Yeah, Illinois is like a sneaky. I don't see them as like a title team, but they're a sneaky deep tournament run team to me.
Yeah, Elite Eight. Yeah, I could see it. I could see
even
it.
I'd be like super surprised if they're in the championship. But I could see, like, if you told me they were a Final Four team, I wouldn't be surprised.
No. I picked Brad Underwood to be Coach of the Year, and I may be right. All right, so I too am going with the Illini. All right, now we have Colorado State, number 24 at Nevada. Nevada's kind of taking a slide of late. And what do you got?
I'm gonna go Colorado State. I think they're good. I think they're deep. Just really clicking on all cylinders right now.
All right, I'm gonna go with Nevada to turn things around at home. I've been picking them and losing on them. I'm giving them one more chance. All right, now we have, believe it or not, I think this is for first place in the Pac-12. Arizona State at Oregon.
Oregon, especially at home, one of the best venues in the Pac-12. Rest in peace. And I really like the way that Oregon's been playing the last 2 weeks.
And they are now healthy, completely healthy. Not all those guys are in game shape, but they are healthy.
Kwami's been really good. I was down on him to start the year, and he's been really good the last 2 weeks.
Right. I am going with Oregon as well. All right, we have Stanford Cal. This is kind of like football rivalry week. I said rivalry. Rivalry.
All right, Elmer Fudd.
We have Stanford at Cal.
I don't know.
These teams have been up and down.
I know. I feel like both of them they both play to the level of competition, and so then when they play at each other, it's like, what competition are they going to play at? I think I'll probably go Stanford. I really like the guard play. Looks like some of the freshmen are starting to come on. Stojakovic and Carlisle both are really good. And I think the more run that the two of them get, the better it's going to be for Stanford.
Yeah, agreed. We have Seton Hall at Marquette. Marquette lost at Seton Hall earlier a couple weeks ago.
Got to stick with Marquette. They need to win. It's at home. Look for them to get revenge.
I agree. All right, next up we have these are Saturday games, by the way, folks.
Oh, man, this Saturday is deep.
Yeah. We have Kansas at Iowa State. Now, we don't know. Taron Lipsey didn't play on Saturday, and they still beat TCU on the road. That shocked me.
Smacked them.
Yeah, without Lipsey. So so now Kansas comes to town this Saturday to Ames.
Iowa State. I think those two teams are pretty even. I know there's like very different type of teams, but I really like Iowa State, especially at home.
Yep, I don't trust Kansas at all, and
on the road.
So I am going with Iowa State at Ames. All right, now we have Texas Tech, number 20, at number 11, Oklahoma.
I picked Oklahoma to lose to Texas. This game's back at home. I still like Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a good team. They need to get that win. I'll go Oklahoma.
All righty. Next is Texas at BYU, and now I'm going to say I picked BYU to beat Houston. I can't pick them to beat Texas as well, so I'm going to go with Texas. Who you got?
I'm going to go BYU.
All righty. Now we got another traditional rivalry, Princeton at Cornell for first place in the Ivy right now.
Give me the guards of Princeton.
Princeton is loaded, man.
Yeah.
They look good. They look good. I mean, they look like a Sweet 16 team.
Ooh, you heard it here first.
All right, now we have Clemson versus Duke. Did they play already this year?
Yeah, they played at Clemson. And pretty confident Duke got the win.
Okay. Duke, of course, has been missing Mark Mitchell and Jeremy Roach, and they weren't there for that loss at Pitt. So who do you have here now that Duke is home against Clemson?
I'm going to stick with Duke. I still really like the pieces on this Duke team. Man, they just cannot seem to put it together. I'm hoping one of those two guys is expected to be back. If it's Mitchell, I don't know.
He had been playing well, though, before he got hurt.
I know. What game was I watching where he hit like 4 threes and the announcers were just going wild? And
yeah, that was the Notre Dame game.
Yes. Oh, he saved them against Notre Dame. And the threes were just like line drives. And but he's such a versatile defender. He does move the ball well.
Rebounds.
Yeah, guards like 4 positions. So I'll still take Duke. I don't. This Clemson team's tough, but I just don't know outside of PJ Hall if they really truly have the scoring to score away from home.
Right. I'm going to go with Duke at home too. I think it'll be very close though. All right, now we have Utah State versus Boise State. And I believe this is for first place in the Mountain West, if I'm not mistaken. Number 18, Utah State, by the way. Who you got, Caleb?
I'll stick with Utah State. I just think their offense is so good. Like, everybody shoots. They move the ball really well. They play at a great pace. Yeah.
I am going to go with Boise for the sole reason I've picked against them, I think, every time they've come up, and I've lost every time. So I, just like Oklahoma, I'm going with Boise. So, and they are home. So they're, they've been playing really good ball. Kind of a little smoke and mirrors, but they are playing good ball. All right, so now we have for first place in the Sun Belt Conference, James Madison against Appalachian State, who is a team to be reckoned with. Trust me, folks.
I'm just going to I'm going to say James Madison.
I would go with App State just because they're home. I think these teams are pretty close, though.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Arizona, as they look to get back into the Pac-12 top spot, they're going to Oregon this Saturday.
I'm going to stick with Arizona. Really like their team. They've struggled a bit at recently, but I still think they're the better team than Oregon.
I do too, and they have been struggling. But I'm gonna look for them to turn it around. I'm hoping that that UCLA game woke them up. So we shall see. I'm going with Arizona as well. All right, we have Dayton and Richmond, and this is for first place in the Atlantic 10 Conference.
It's not even a question. Give me Dayton all day, every day. Probably by 10.
Yeah, I like Dayton too, even though it is at Richmond. I'm going with Dayton. All right, now we have for first place in the Missouri Valley. All these games are for first place. Missouri Valley, we got Bradley, who I picked to win the conference preseason, against Indiana State, who I've grown to like since.
I'll pick the home team here, Indiana State.
Yeah, Indiana State is really. They got 4 really good players, and they can get scoring from a lot of different areas.
And they've just been playing. I think they've been playing well recently, and at home, that offense is going to be tough to stop.
Yeah, they shoot well. Mm-hmm. I like Indiana State. All right, now this is to stay out of last place in the Pac-12. Though UCLA is 3-5 in conference, believe it or not, and so it's UCLA at USC. Who you got?
First, I just want to say that our beliefs about UCLA and USC, oh man, those have aged so terribly.
Yes, agreed.
Everyone's has. I think just USC at home. I think their guard play is just better. Like that's what it comes down to me.
Yes. Now, if Boogie Ellis plays, he's missed the last 3 games. They've lost all 3. They said there was a good chance he was going to play this weekend. He did not. They got trounced by Arizona State. I am going with UCLA, thinking Boogie will be back. That's my pick. If Boogie doesn't play, though, I look for UCLA to win, but I'm betting on USC right now. All right, wrapping it up. We got one game on Sunday, and I'm going to be there for this game. And I want to warn you, Caleb, Purdue hasn't won at Rutgers since 2018. They've lost 4 straight times at Purdue. Zach Edey has never won at Rutgers. So you're going with Rutgers, right?
Is he playing on Saturday? Or Sunday? Is he playing?
I assume Zach Edey's playing on Saturday.
Okay, I'll take Purdue.
All right. I, too, am going with Purdue to break that six-year losing streak. Rutgers just isn't the same Rutgers that we've seen the last few years. I'm going to enjoy the game, though, and hopefully I get to beat Zach Edey.
Definitely.
All right. Well, it was great seeing you, Caleb. You've been missed.
Good to be back.
And as always, I want to thank all of our listeners. And we didn't have a special guest this week, but we shall next week. If you ever miss an episode, you can get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. Also, if you would like to send us a question for the mailbag, please email it to admin@hoopsprospects.com. We also take questions via social media on Twitter @hoopsprospects, on Instagram @thehoopsprospects, and on Facebook @hoopspros. We will see you next week. We're going to do a double episodes next week. We're going to have one college/NBA draft episode and one NBA episode. Our NBA guys are chomping at the bit to get back on the air. And and somewhere in there we will have a guest too. All right. Any final thoughts, Caleb, before we say goodnight?
Just excited to watch some basketball this weekend, man. That's it.
Yeah. A lot of exciting games this past weekend. I mean, buzzer beaters. All right. It was good job. See you next week. What? What'd I do?
Nothing. It was like you were like searching for the bow to wrap up the episode and like couldn't quite get there.
Yeah, this is true.